Looking to hire a VA? I have the perfect resource for you. In the episode description, you can find my Hiring a VA Survival Guide. It has all kinds of resources and tools, everything you need, including step-by-step blog post walkthroughs, videos, tutorials, and specific podcast episodes from the Social Media Magic podcast to help you hire your first or your next VA. You can find all that information in the episode description or in the show notes. Hello and welcome to the Social Media Magic Podcast, the perfect podcast for TPT sellers, teacherpreneurs, and teacher business owners who consider themselves to be introverts. Each episode shares all kinds of ideas, tips, tactics, and strategies to help you make more sales and grow your community on social media. Without further ado, let's get on to today's episode. Whether you're a seller looking to hire their first or their next VA, or a VA who's looking for their first or next client, you're going to love the Hiring a VA Summit happening May 19th to the 22nd. Everything that weekend is absolutely free, and there are even some bonus live events the weekend before. You can get all of that information in the episode description, or if you have any questions about getting involved, you can send me a DM on Instagram over at Brittany Berlinich. Welcome back to the Social Media Magic Podcast. I'm Brittany Berlinich. I'm a content strategist, social media manager, and the host of the show, and I am so glad that you're here. Today, we're talking about the different kinds of virtual assistants that exist. And this is going to be really easy, simple, short, and sweet. There are only two kinds of virtual assistants. I know it's not super exciting. For some reason, psychology-wise, SEO, we always want to click on the blog post that says 21 types of virtual assistants, the 500 kinds of virtual assistants, but honestly, it only comes down to two. So if you're brand new to the world of outsourcing for your TPT business, of hiring as a teacherpreneur, working with virtual assistants and VAs who work with other TPT sellers, then go and listen to my last episode where I answered the general question, what is a virtual assistant? And I shared some other details and resources for you. I also have a blog post that I'm linking in this episode called What is Outsourcing in Business that is really good for anyone completely brand new to the concept, especially if you're brand new to the world of owning a business and this is all still stuff that you're learning, which I totally get it. We're always learning. So check out that blog post. And then you'll also want to stay tuned because May 19th to the 22nd, we have a mini audio-only summit, which is super chill. You get free access that weekend. You can also pay for an all-access pass if you want to get access to it for longer. But basically, you're going to be learning all about working with VAs. We even have a little interview speed dating thing happening. So if you know that you definitely want to start working with VAs this summer, which would be a really good time to start because you'll have more time and energy and mental bandwidth, and or if you just really want to get ready for the school year, which you probably should be thinking about now or early summer if you want to start getting those resources out for back to school, which I know is so wild to think about when summer break hasn't even happened yet, but it is what we need to be doing. We really should be thinking 1 to 2 quarters ahead, ideally. I know that's not always possible. So back to the episode at hand. What are the two different kinds of VAs, Brittany? Why are there only two types of virtual assistants? Well, I mentioned this a little bit in this last episode, but I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into this idea of VA or virtual assistant being a catch-all term. The two types of VAs or virtual assistants that I would say exist are generalists and specialists. If you hire a generalist VA, which is usually your first hire, and that's not to say that a generalist VA is bad, it could be exactly what you need. This is a person who they're kind of a jack or a Jill of all trades. They may or may not have a lot of experience in the different things that you need, but they're someone who is dependable, they're trustworthy, they're quick learners, they're self-starters. Even if they don't know how to do it yet, they will learn how to do it. And they're definitely motivated, whether they're super experienced or whether they're brand new and they're just breaking into the VA world. They're willing to do all kinds of different tasks and activities because they want to get more hours or they want to get more clients with the packages they have. They want to be able to take on more projects. And so they're willing to go outside of the normal quote unquote scope that maybe a specialist would be. A really good example of this is, you know that you hate marketing, right? I feel like a lot of you in my audience would probably fit this description. You hate marketing and you're like, I really just don't want to do any of it. I just want to sit there and create the resources. I want for someone else to take over the marketing for me. Now, if you want to have someone who knows the marketing strategy, like someone who's an expert, then you would need a specialist. But let me give you an example of why hiring a generalist might be super helpful. If you know that you want to have the same person write your emails and you're willing to learn with them, they may not know how to do all these things at first, but you're willing to honestly pay a lower hourly rate or package because this person's new, they're learning and growing with you typically. If you're willing to have a little more patience and learn with them, you could maybe take a course that you've taken on email marketing and give it to that person. They will go through the course and they will learn how to do your weekly email newsletters for you. It might take them, honestly, several weeks or months to even get into a point where they sound like you, but then they've learned the task. And what's really great about that is it's a win-win, mutually beneficial relationship and setup, because now they can go and take on more clients that offer those email marketing services. In fact, they might even, after trying all these different things, become a specialist who chooses to niche down into one specific thing. And we'll talk about specialists in a minute. But you might have them start with that because maybe you can only afford a couple hours a month at first. That's okay. Like I said in the last episode, you don't have to hire a VA for 40 hours a week or even 40 hours a month. You can start with 1 or 2 hours a week, which is totally fine. And you don't even have to do hourly. You can do a package if you prefer. It's totally up to you and the VA as long as you can both agree. But remember, legally, they're independent contractors. They have to set the pay range. You agree to it. Okay, so say you've hired this person for 1 hour a week. They've gotten your email marketing down. And now you're like, okay, so glad that I don't have to worry about that anymore. They're doing my email marketing for me. It'd be really nice if they would write my notes to followers too. So that way I know that's getting done every single week and I'm not missing that opportunity to reach the people who are already following my store on TPT. So then you go to that generalist virtual assistant and say, hey, I know you've been doing my email marketing. Are you available for another hour a week? And they say, why, yes, I am. I would love to work 2 hours a week for you. That's taking me up to 8 hours a month. Yay, more money for me. And then you show them, you record a quick video with Loom or maybe ScreenPal, formerly Screencast-O-Matic, Screencastify, whatever you're using, and you walk them through the process of sending a note to followers on TPT. You show them what you typically include in it, how you insert and highlight the resources, how that all looks, what formatting you like, how you usually sign off in your notes, and you send them that video in an app like Slack or Voxer or even Facebook Messenger. You don't have to get super fancy. And then they see it and they're like, okay, I'll try it. And just to make sure that they write up to your standards, maybe you give them a task and you, of course, it's paid. And you say, hey, why don't you just try one freehand, see how you like it. If you feel like they're a good writer, which you probably do if they've been writing your marketing emails for you. Or maybe you send them the Google Doc template of what you made last time. Or if you don't make them in Google Docs, you could just copy what you've sent, put it into a Google Doc, send it to them and say, hey, use what I've written to make one for me. They write it, they send it back to you. How does this look? And one of two things will probably happen. One, you'll either be unhappy with it and you'll think, oh my gosh, I knew it. I made a mistake. I should have done this myself. I'm better at everything. And why was I trusting anyone else to be able to come in and know my business and my brain? That might happen. And if it does, don't judge yourself for it. Honestly, literally everybody who hires someone thinks that at one point. It's just human nature. It's how we are. Or the second thing will happen. Wow, this person's note to followers is better than the ones I've written. And oh my gosh, I'm so glad I found this person. I don't have to do anything else. Like, they are good. Here you go, take this. And then you might starting to find other things that they could do, like, well, if this person can write my marketing emails and they can write my notes to followers, maybe they can write my Facebook group post too. And then you can pitch that to them. Hey, love what you're doing with the emails and notes to followers. Are you up for XYZ? And then one of two things will happen. Either they'll say, yes, let's try it out, and you'll repeat the same process you did. You'll screen record yourself. Do you kind of see a pattern here? You'll screen record yourself doing what you do with the Facebook group or whatever. You send it to them, see if what they create. If you like it, great, awesome. If you don't, let them know your concerns. And it's okay, by the way, to give them feedback. We want to be respectful, of course, but you can honestly tell someone like, hey, I was thinking of something like this, because what's going to happen is while this person is becoming a better VA, service provider, freelancer, whatever you want to call them, you're also becoming a better boss. And that is such a hard thing for us to really understand because we're teachers, we educate, we're communicators, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're super clear communicators. And a lot of times we have a blind spot when it comes to this because we don't always have the self-awareness enough to recognize when we haven't been as clear. And in fact, sometimes it's just been in our brain for so long that it's easier for us to think, oh, you know what? I'll just do it. It's just easier. I'll just do it. If you find yourself saying those things after working with 1 or 2 virtual assistants, maybe look back and look inward and think, was I as clear as I could have been? Because I think if we're all honest, There's been at least one time in the classroom as teachers where we gave instructions to our class or to a student, they didn't do it. It's really easy for us to blame them when instead if we looked inward and said, maybe I wasn't as clear as I could have been. It's the same thing for virtual assistants. So like I said, anytime you ask them to do a task, either one of three things is going to happen. They're going to say, no, I don't do that, which with a generalist is less likely to happen. 2, sure, let me go for it. And they do it and it's great, or they do it and it's not so great and then you have to give them feedback. But those are like really the 3 outcomes. Or if they do something absolutely terrible or against your values, then of course you can let them go. That can happen too. And maybe that'll be a future episode. But you can see where hiring a generalist can be super beneficial. You have someone who is growing with you, they're learning with you, you're starting to kind of get more comfortable with them, you know how they work, your work is getting more efficient, they're getting more efficient, so actually they might even be more affordable for you over time if they're hourly, because they're going to become faster and more efficient at what they do, and then you can give them more tasks, and you might not even be paying that much more because the other tasks they learned, they've gotten more efficient with. You see how this is going? So then you're like, oh, okay, great, this person's doing my emails, my notes to followers, my group, what about my Instagram? Okay, great. This person's got Instagram down. Can I have them be my second person when I'm doing webinars? Oh my gosh, great. This is awesome. Can I have this person make my product covers? Can you do my thumbnails too? Oh my gosh, can you do my previews? You see what I'm saying is like the more you do, the more addictive it kind of becomes because you learn how to create an SOP, which is what we're really doing when we're sending them a video of what we're talking about. An SOP is a standard operating procedure, and you get better at communicating and figuring out what are your systems because a lot of times we don't have them in our head. By the way, if you want help with this, you should definitely check out the Finishing Framework course by Erin Waters. I don't know if it's open at the moment, but this is literally her zone of genius is like SOP systems or just systems in general, right? Like she is the systems girl, systems queen, if you will. And that is not my zone of genius, but I know enough to get me through it. Anyway, definitely check out her course. I don't know if she has an affiliate link for it, but if she does, I will be sure to include that in the episode description and I'll figure out some kind of cool bonus to give you. So just message me and let me know if you end up getting it through my link, if there's a link, if it's there, and we'll figure something out. Maybe we'll do a little party for people who get it. Okay, getting distracted. So those are the perks and the drawbacks of hiring a generalist. They may not have the skills and experience that you want right off the bat, but there's someone who is likely willing to grow and learn with you. And there's one final thing I should mention. If you do hire a generalist, it is really likely that if you hire a generalist, after a few months or a year or maybe a couple of years, they're going to eventually maybe want to narrow down, to specialize, to niche down. This isn't a guarantee, but it is likely to happen if the person was new when you hired them. When this happens, you're going to have to make a decision of do you start over and hire a new generalist? You won't really be starting over because you will have learned all these different things that's going to help you be an even better hirer and employee and boss of the next person. Or do you then have that person stay on as a specialist for that one chosen niche and then hire another generalist or hire on other specialists? Because by that point, you might have grown in your business and your income too. I'll tell you that I started as a VA just over a year ago as when I'm recording this, which is so crazy. Like, oh my gosh, what a year it's been. And when I was first doing some tasks for people, I was honestly willing to do just about anything. I knew I had a penchant that I was going to focus, an idea I was going to focus on content and copywriting, but I wanted to be sure. So I tried a lot of different things. And I still do a few of those things for those people because I love those people and I want to keep working with them. But there will come a point when someone will probably eventually want to niche down as a VA, a virtual assistant freelancer, because it's honestly just easier and it's more profitable for them, which of course, at the end of the day, they have to make a decision that's right for them. You as the employer, the business owner, have to make a decision that's right for you. So it's just something to be aware of. You're basically training someone to go. And that's, if you're being a good boss, a good leader, that's going to happen anyway. You're going to be training someone to be ready to leave you because they're going to leave with so much more knowledge, skills, and experience than when they got with you. And that's okay. All right. The other type of VA or virtual assistant is a specialist. This is when we're talking about blog ghostwriters, copywriters, email marketing copywriters, so you can get even more specific and granular, social media strategists, social media managers, content creators, TikTok specialists, Instagram specialists, Reel specialists, like REEL, Instagram Reel specialists. You can start to see how these things get really, really specific because even with Instagram, there's all these sub-niches, right? There are social media managers who focus solely on Instagram who specialize in DM lead generation. I'm actually going to be having her on the show soon. I don't remember, honestly, if this episode comes out before or after her, so maybe I already had her on the show. But look up Victoria Boyd. She talks about DM sales, and I think that would be a good course for any of you to do because she talks about sales skills, because sales and marketing are two completely different things. And she talks about how to use your Instagram DMs to get more sales, which is what we want at the end of the day, right? But sales is also the word that tends to freak us out the most. So you can start to see that these people who are specialists, they are experts. They might not be masters. Like when you think of a master, you're thinking of someone who has, spent 10 years or 5 years something, which is not necessarily true. You can become a master at something in a year if you focus on it. But they might be an expert, meaning they've spent a lot of time. They may not be master level, but they're experts. And I know so many experts in a variety of things. I know someone who does lead generation specifically with DMs from Facebook groups. I know someone who specializes in static feeds for Instagram. You see how specific these things are, and those are just all in the social media strategy niche. So when you're working with a specialist, there are some different advantages and drawbacks. One big advantage is they know their stuff. You are not hiring this person and then having to send them an SOP and screen record typically. Now, you might have to do that a little bit if you have a specific tool you want for them to use, which usually a specialist won't even do that. Usually a specialist is like, nope, leave me alone. I know what to do. Just hire me for a specific job and I'll do it for you. You can also think about web design, for example. If you want a website done, you're typically not going to tell them how to do their job because you don't know how to do their job. It's just you're hiring someone as a specialist for that reason because you are completely getting it off your plate. You don't really have to worry about it. Whereas a generalist virtual assistant, you are training them, you have the strategy, you are having them execute on your strategy. With a specialist, they are coming in with the strategy, they may or may not be executing. With something like a web design project, that's a little different because they are executing something for a shorter amount of time. Whereas if you're hiring a specialist VA like a social media manager, for example, they may or may not have a strategy. Social media strategist will, social media manager won't, but it's usually something more ongoing, right? Their job is social media. Their job is Instagram. Their job is TikTok. They are making reels for you. They are making XYZ for you. You can see how that's a little different. They have a specific scope of work. So one drawback to this is you can't just go to your Instagram specialist and say, hey, could you write some emails for me? I mean, you could ask them, but if you already have a package that you're paying with them, typically the package that they set forth is not going to include those marketing emails. It's going to include what they've set forth in their social media management package. So they're going to avoid scope creep, which is what we call in the VA world when people ask us to do things that aren't really in our job description. It's like those other duties as assigned. A VA, virtual assistant, a freelancer can technically say no because they are hired as an independent contractor and they have a little more flexibility. They're not an employee. But, VAs, we want to serve you guys. We want to help you. So we're probably going to say yes if we can do it. And if it's not too much of a stressor and if it's not too expensive for us because, we have to pay for tools and things too. So that's something to think about. If you want someone who is kind of like a catch-all support team to your business, you might want to hire a generalist. But if you need somebody to do something specific, like build your website, maybe you want someone to set up a Shopify store so that you're not just selling on TPT. Maybe you want someone to list all of your resources on a site like Made by Teachers or Classful. They're just going to be taking that on for you. Or maybe you need someone to help you get good at TikTok. You want to be the person who's executing and doing it, but you don't really know what to do or to say. And so you want someone to just help you get started. Then you might want to work with a TikTok strategist. So the benefits are you're going to get somebody who knows what they're doing. You're probably going to see a better result faster. But it's also going to be more expensive, and that can be really hard because likely, depending on where you are in your business, you might need a specialist for something. But if you can't afford what the specialists are charging, which by the way, I want to say something about that. There's a real temptation when we can't afford something to say, that's too expensive. Isn't that so interesting that we do that with people? And I don't know, maybe we do it with products too. But you would never go to a Lexus dealer and tell them that their car is too expensive and try to drive down the price, right? I mean, most of us wouldn't do that. We would just say, oh, okay, I can't afford a Lexus. I'm in the Nissan category. I'm going to go get a Nissan. You can actually find a specialist at all different kinds of price ranges. So I would just ask you to really reflect on what can you actually afford and then find somebody who matches that. And so even with me, when I'm hiring, I really tell people like towards the beginning, I'm like, I don't want to waste your time. What's your required hourly rate? And in fact, I asked them to put that in the first email to me because I respect them so much. I don't want them to waste their time writing, doing 5 tasks for me and stuff if they're not going to be able, if they're not going to want to work with me, right? If I'm not paying enough for them or if they're too expensive for me. Obviously, there's 2 sides to it, but that's just something to think about from the VA perspective. Another drawback is a specialist might be busier. And this kind of goes with what I just said, but if they are busier, if they're getting booked up for their specialty, that demand is going to go up. And so their price might go up, which is honestly great. That's great for them. But that's something that you might want to think about. So with all that in mind, how are you feeling? I'm going to make sure you have other episodes about whether or not you're ready to hire a VA. But I'm hoping that by listening to this episode, you're going to have a much better idea of knowing exactly what you're ready to hire for and who do you need. Do you need a generalist VA, someone who's really ready to partner with you as almost like a co-owner in your business, even though they won't co-own it, but someone who is just about as bought in as you, probably not as much because obviously you have way more to financially gain from your business than they do, but someone who's really committed to growing with you versus hiring someone who can just come in, tackle a task, get a specific project done. They know what they're doing. They're specialists. They don't need you to ask them or tell them what to do because they are just going to do it. There are times in your businesses where you need either or both of those things. And depending on specifically what you need done, you're going to need a different person. I know I mention this in every episode, but I'm a social media strategist who also acts as a social media manager or a copywriter or a content creator, depending on who I'm working with. So if you need support with that, if you need help growing a Facebook group so that you can build your email list, or using Instagram as a lead generation and sales tool, not just for funsies and connection, then that's definitely something I can help you with. You can just send me a DM on Instagram over at Brittany Verlenich, and I'd be happy to talk more with you about that. Or you can come and ask a question about it in the Social Media Magic Facebook group. And remember, May 19th to the 22nd, we're having a mini audio-only summit all about hiring a VA, so you'll definitely want to catch that. All right, that's all for now. Talk soon.